All right. So I'm not much of a country boy, but for some reason, when that Sweet Home Alabama comes on in the intro, I'm immediately pumped for this. I mean, they're on the road, they're all together as friends on this road trip, going to a concert, right? Uh, I'm feeling the vibes. What do you think, Johnny?
Uh, yeah. No, I mean, I don't necessarily consider myself a country boy, but I have always fancied myself a little bit of a cowboy. Um, Not in any visible way, but um, I've always been fascinated by you know the Wild West, as it were, and the very idea of Texas in and of itself is kind of the total embodiment of that vibe, at least the idea of it. So, yeah, man. Uh, Leonard Skinner playing right out the gate. It's a great way to you know get this party started. And I wish we could play it right now, but
That's what I'm saying. If it wasn't for copyright type stuff, I would definitely play that like in the intro just to give everybody the vibe that I
I'll say
was feeling right out the gate. And
that
it's
would get that would get us shut down real quick.
right, but then it's crazy how you go from that type of intro to it shifts so quickly to something completely different.
Hmm.
So yeah. Anyways, welcome to this episode of Let's Try Some Head Cheese.
No.
um,
Oh God,
but
no.
yeah, Johnny, thank you for accepting my invite once again to talk to me on Blood and Brews, of course. Um,
Hell yeah.
and, you know, you were telling me how this movie was important to you and how it's a big deal to you because it was one of the first films you'd seen. And so that made me excited to talk to you about it. And, or one of the first horror films, correct?
Yeah, I would consider this like I had seen things like Jaws and even Alien, which really is like a haunted house movie. But like as far as like pure full blown like horror movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is the legit first movie of that ilk that I watched.
No, that got me super pumped to talk to you about this. So, before we get too much into the story of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and what we think about it, can you tell everyone some stuff about you and your channel? Because I know that I've had you on here several times, but still, I like to a refresher.
No, I appreciate it, man. I have a channel on YouTube called The Jony Horror Show, and there's a multitude of different types of content on that channel. But lately, it's mostly podcasts and horror movie reviews. So, um, yeah, I have two different podcasts that I do right now. One's the Johnny Horror Podcast, and that is pretty much just horror centric. Me and my friends talk about different horror movies. You yourself have been on that podcast a number of times, and then we have the Johnny Jaws cast that me and my pal Brian, we just go through and talk about Jaws in cinema and the films that ripped it off, the films that are inspired by it, and the sequels as well. We have a new episode releasing at midnight tonight, which by the time this episode releases, that will have already premiered. But we are discussing the 1977 film Orca, which is a pretty notable Jaws ripoff, and we had a lot of fun watching that movie and discussing it. So, yeah, man, always doing something on my channel one way or the other. So, if anyone ever wants to tune in and hear some shenanigans, you're more than welcome.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All
Uh,
right. Well, there is a question that since I've known you for a while now, I've wanted to ask for quite some time, and I've kind of like, man,
oh dear.
how do I bring this up, right? How do I don't know how to really like word it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and ask. Is it hard for you to look in the mirror sometimes and think to yourself like, man, I look like a young Kurt Russell?
Um, uh, I I can say that it's hard to look in the mirror sometimes and think to myself, why don't I look more like Kurt Russell?
Okay.
Because there are there's definitely a vibe. Obviously, when my hair was a bit longer and my beard was a bit bigger, I really missed out on an opportunity to be uh, RJ McCready from Thing, which is I think the go to that most people um, think of when they associate me with Kurt Russell.
That's
Because
what I saw. I saw a meme from the thing, and I was like, "Holy shit, dude! This dude looks like." And then it was the New York one. Now I've
oh
not.
yeah, Escape from New York.
Yes,
Yeah, young Kurt Russell. Definitely, there's definitely a vibe there that is parallel to me. I don't think I have nearly um, as much charisma or swagger, but he is at maximum levels of cool in both of those movies. I think I probably relate to him the most in Big Trouble Little China, where he is
yes.
the man who pretends like he knows what he's doing, but is constantly in over his head and just makes a fool of himself. And I think that's probably me more so than I'd like to admit. But hey, you know what? I that is the greatest of compliments anyone could ever get. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you, sir.
For sure. All right. Well, what are we drinking tonight, Johnny?
Buddy, I gotta admit, you caught me on a not drinking evening. So I got some high quality H2O that I'm sipping on, but I did not come completely empty handed. I have a cocktail that I think pairs well with this film. It's kind of what we do on my podcast. We do something like what cocktail would you pair? So if you'll permit me, I can tell you what drink I think it suits this movie.
Please do.
The cocktail in question is called a mudslide. It is for all intents and purposes, it's an alcoholic milkshake. It consists of vodka, coffee liqueur, Irish cream, and heavy cream. You throw it in the ice, or throw it in a blender with some ice, and then you get yourself a milkshake basically. And the inside of the glass, you do like little chocolate swirls and stuff like that. You top it off with whipped cream, and do some chocolate drizzle on top. Now, the reason that I picked this um, for this film specifically, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Remake, is that just the name Mudslide suits because as we'll get into, this is kind of a absolutely just dirty and grimy movie from start to finish, and there are numerous times where characters are either moving through dirt, mud, slime, grime, all of the above. And also, this is a film that really is the beginning of what would dominate the um, early to mid 2000s as far as what kind of horror movies we would get, these sort of overindulgent like gore fests. And I don't really think there's anything more overindulgent than an alcoholic milkshake. It really is the best of both worlds in terms of just being uh,
Delicious.
enjoying yourself to the max. So,
Oh yeah, for sure.
but yeah, Mudslide, check it out. If
All
you're
right.
feeling like you want a tummy ache later on in the night.
That sounds super good, actually. Just the
Yeah.
coldness and the chocolatiness. All right. Well, tonight I'm drinking a beer called Headway. It's an Imperial IPA, and it's coming in at 7.8% alcohol by volume.
Damn.
It's from Moonraker Brewing. See if I can get that in there.
All right.
It's got sort of a cool looking can.
Yeah, I like that.
So, and it's tasty. It's good. I'm trying to veer away from only drinking the hazies all the time. So, I like this one. It's crisp, but since you're not drinking, if I start to veer off the path of speaking of this film, just kind of knock me back on track, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Hey,
perfect.
I mean, I get it. When I do my podcast with my buddies, we're usually going pretty hard. So by the 2.5 hour mark, we're getting a little sidetracked for sure. So yeah, I got you, buddy.
Exactly. Thank you. All right. So, have you heard of the film critic Roger Ebert?
No, never heard of him. You want to tell me? Yes, definitely.
Okay, I was gonna say he's
Ebert.
pretty famous, but I don't want to just assume.
He is
Um,
he is the film critic. He's the guy. So yeah.
right, and rest in peace.
Hmm.
Um, but I was very shocked to hear that he gave this film zero stars rating, and he had kind of a negative thing to say about it. So I was actually really surprised.
Oh,
Um, it,
that surprised you? I thought when you said you were surprised, I
yeah,
was like, did Ebert give this a good review? No, zero
the
stars.
fact that it was zero was what tripped me out because it's kind of rare, right, to hear that. Not
Yeah.
that I follow all of his stuff. I mean, I've looked him up a couple times, but it still kind of surprised me, I guess.
Yeah, no, Ebert was both Siskel and Ebert, his partner, they were
Mhm.
notoriously harsh with horror movies. Just really, it was a rarity for them to give positive review to any horror film. That's why, the big one, Halloween, when he gave that film a good review, that review ended up really catapulting that movie to do as well as it did because before his review came out, it was not tracking as well with audiences and critics. So yeah, no, Roger Ebert's word was a big deal, and I mean, I remember when this movie came out, I had never seen the original or anything like that. I just remember flipping through the newspapers back in the day when you would flip through the newspapers to read reviews and just reading like the local review um, for this movie, and it was not positive. The reviews, the vibe around this movie was not a positive thing for the most part. So
So, just to give a brief kind of idea of what the film is about, while the film's introduction and ending are tailored to appear to be based on a series of true events, the film's plot is a complete work of fiction. The film is inspired by the murderous acts of Ed Gein, a Wisconsin-based serial killer that was infamous for exhuming corpses as well as decorating his home with the body parts of his victims. Guy also confessed to wearing the tanned skin of women as a suit. Now, I'm assuming you knew all this before, right?
Yes, sir.
And if we're comparing this to the original film, I feel like it kind of departed a lot from the original and went its own direction. Would you agree or disagree?
Yes, and yes and no. I think there's a lot of similarities in a lot of ways. Even the poster for the original says, uh, these based on a true story, or based on true events, or something along those lines.
I
Uh,
love that intro though when it shows like the words and the guy's
yeah.
narrating it. It just gives this eerie like feeling. And I want to say that they used the same guy to narrate the remake.
Yes. I have it pulled up right here. Oh God damn it! I know his name. It's John something, and it's pissing me off that I can't.
I'm
Um,
not going to remember it for anything.
yeah, John Larroquette, who he did um, do the original narration, and I think it's pretty spectacular that they brought him back, because his voice just has this certain vibe about it that I don't think anybody else quite match that. Yeah, okay. So the original poster, which I think you're actually wearing on your shirt right now, just says, "What happened is true. Now the motion picture that is just as real." So even in the original, they are um, leaning into um, the idea that these events took place the way that the film suggests, rather than nitpicking, you know, stuff from Ed Gein. Which, I mean, Ed Gein's life is the gold mine for a lot of horror movies. Obviously, we're talking
Oh yeah.
about a suit made from women's skin. That's Buffalo Bill right there. So from Silence of the Lambs, as a 13-year-old kid watching this movie, I 100% believed that the found footage at the beginning of the film and the end of the film was real. I 1000% believe that was real. So,
Nice. That to me is magic because that is the way that Blair Witch hit me. Was that
yeah,
way. And I think I remember seeing it in the theater and I was like, "Oh shit, this is like a," and it took me a while to realize, "Oh, you're an idiot." Like I felt stupid because I believed it, right? But it was like, "Yeah, that's awesome that like a movie can make you believe that much." I
yeah,
love that.
absolutely.
Did you know that in 2002, Marilyn Manson was announced as the composer for this project, and he later had to bow out due to conflicting schedules?
That I had not heard before. No.
That's a trip to me. And how do you think that that would have affected the score? Because part of me thinks that if it would have been a little bit too over the top, it could have kind of killed the whole vibe of the film. Yet, also knowing Marilyn Manson, it could have also made the film that much more dark and fucked up feeling.
My personal opinion is that I don't know how much more dark and fucked up this movie can get. Uh,
Yeah, okay.
I've always thought that Marilyn Manson's talents have come from his lyrics, and um, what he's able to put into the words of his songs. He's very gifted in that regard. As far as his actual music is concerned, like, I have never heard him compose a film score, so I don't think I could give a genuine, like, honest answer of whether that would be good or not. Um, I do think this score is pretty solid. Um,
I'm
and
not thinking about it. I'm feeling it, and I think that's important in a film.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I, you know, as we'll get into this, this is a film of great significance to me. So I mean, I can hear the score playing in my head right now, and it immediately puts me in the film. So like, it's one of those things that, like, that's a fun what if, but like, I have no desire to change what it is.
Beautiful. Okay. So the beginning of the film, I'd mentioned that it kind of starts off with this like good upbeat vibe, right? Kids on an adventure going to a concert, the music, it's just like this good feeling. And then we hit you with the hitchhiker scene. What is your opinion of that opening scene? And maybe describe it a little bit that way, like,
Yeah, no. Obviously, both films start out. Um, well, the introduction to our lead characters is they're all packed in a van. In the original film, Sally and her brother and her friends are going to um, visit. I believe they're going to visit their grandfather's grave and or house because there's been grave diggings going on, and they're concerned about whether or not his body's been dug up and defiled like several other corpses in the area have. In this film, it's a little bit more upbeat. The characters are on their way to a Leonard Skinner concert. They just left Mexico. They have a pinata filled with marijuana, which is great.
yep.
Uh, like I think it's Andy and Pepper are in the back just like making out the whole time. And um, we get a very natural introduction to each of our characters. Kemper and um, Aaron and um, what's his name?
Morgan.
Morgan, played by Jonathan Tucker. And yeah, Andy and Pepper is a person that they've actually the four of them have picked up. They met him. That I can't remember if she was hitchhiking too. I think she was. So they've already picked up one hitchhiker, and so they happen upon another hitchhiker. Or I don't even know if she's a hitchhiker. She's just walking in the street. She's not even looking to be picked up. She's just kind of walking around, and they stop and they pick her up, and because they almost hit her when they're fooling around in the car and everything. Um, so our lead characters are um, pick up this gal, and it's very different from the hitchhiker scene in the original, where the hitchhiker happens to be a crazed member of the family that ends up, hunting them. In this one, uh, the gal that they pick up is, in fact, a victim who has escaped, and when she realizes that they're headed back to the town that she um, just escaped. Oddly enough, like, if you think about it, it's weird because she's walking. I think she's walking the same direction that the car's going.
Yeah.
That she would be walking back there, but now we're splitting hairs. Um, uh, so when she realizes that they're heading back there, she starts to freak out and then pulls a handgun from her cooch.
That's
Uh,
what I was gonna ask. Like, I didn't imagine that, right? She literally pulls it out of her
yeah,
woman pocket, and it's
yeah. I
just
don't
like, what is
like.
happening here?
It's kind of weird because she's wearing a dress, so like, yeah, where else is she gonna hide it? But like, why not just hold it?
Yeah,
why, why are you walking around with that up there, sweetheart?
exactly.
um. So she pulls it out, and they all kind of panic, and she leaves them with the very foreboding line, "You're all going to die," and she uh, immediately puts the gun in her mouth and blows out her brains. And the reveal is arguably one of the best shots in modern horror cinema. The camera starts on the two people in the front seats, Kemper and Aaron, and pulls out to see the rest of the gang in the middle of the van, and the camera goes through the hole in her head, out the back of the window
Yeah.
that is shattered with her brains out, and goes all the way out, and you just see this shot of the van with the bloody hole in the window, and you hear them all screaming in it. It is a glorious fucking piece of gore and horror that really sets the stage for the fucking bullshit to come. So yeah, it's pretty legendary as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with that. It just it hits you a lot, like when you that first scene happens, and I'm just even it kind of is dripping.
Oh yeah,
I have like a little sculpture of the sheriff looking and pointing at the little hole in the back of the van.
that's great.
So anyways,
I
yeah.
mean, that scene in and of itself right there is gorier than anything we see in the original film. So it is very much the filmmakers saying this is not your granddaddy's chainsaw movie. So it is it's a pretty bold start for sure.
Oh, yeah, it definitely screams here. Fuck the first one. Here we go. We're gonna put this all in your face, which should have been in the original, because
Mm-hmm.
the original does make your mind go there without showing anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's what I appreciate about the original. I even rewatched the original today, and I remember feeling it gives you more of a gross feeling,
Yeah.
but it's more the acting, the camera, what they're showing you, and but they're not actually showing a lot of like blood, guts, and gore. So it's kind of a trip that the original can make you feel gross, whereas this one almost makes you feel like it's more of a aggressive, bloody, what is it, remake, I guess. So
Well, I mean, as I'll probably reiterate later on, I think a lot of people associate the um, torture porn movement, the start of it, they associate with Saw, but I think it very much begins here because this movie is really going full force in a way that we just have not seen as far as like if you jump back to the 80s, we've seen some gross out horror before, but never anything that is this realistic, this nitty gritty. um and certainly coming out of the 90s, like the big thing was after Scream hit was these heightened slashers, very meta take on everything. And while there's definitely some bloody kills in it, it is nowhere near as violent or as visceral as what we get with this film. And this is the start. Like, it takes a minute for the the horror in the 90s to catch. We have to get to 96 for that decade to really be defined. We're already more than halfway through the decade by the time we get our genre defining film. This one comes out pretty much right out the gate. We're 3 years in to the 2000s, and the rest of the decade will be doing stuff like this, whether it is the remakes or whether it is the torture porn aspect. Texas Chainsaw Massacre lays the groundwork for all the stuff that is to come for the next 10 or so years.
All right. This movie is grimy, dirty, and sweaty. As you kind of mentioned before, do you feel that they did a good job making you feel like you were in rural Texas?
Um, I I get like legitimately grossed out by just them being in the van together. Like I love the scene when they're like, "Hey," the bit where they're like, "Hey, Kemper, is there any chance we could get the air conditioning working?" And he like hits the fan and it just doesn't move, and he's like, "No." All like sweating, like Andy and Pepper like making out, just like like a it's gross. Like I'm not really a big fan of PDA like at all. And then he's like wearing jeans. I don't know. I don't know. Just like jeans in that weather just grosses me out. But then again, and I'm sure we'll cover this. I hope I'm not jumping ahead too much, but
You're good.
Jessica Biel is the fucking babe to end all babes in this movie, and she just looks spectacular, whether she's sweaty or covered in uh, cow muck and grime from the slaughterhouse. So all that said, yeah, no, this movie is really grosses me out pretty much from start to finish. Like it is not a fun world to watch, let alone think about being in. Yeah, I would never ever like. I've been to Texas. Texas, like no shots at Texas, but Texas sucks, man. It is fucking hot and gross and humid, and I do not like the weather there at all. So yeah.
Whenever I talk about this film in particular, I feel like that's how I describe it. I don't say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for 2003. I say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Jessica Biel in it. That way people know, like, automatically, right? You just picture her with the cowboy hat on.
Yeah.
And but yeah, all the white clothing was just like a tinge of brown, where it was just like even like the walls when they would go into like houses and stuff, and just I feel like they paid attention to detail and made sure that things weren't too clean or too, like, I don't know, not dirty, right? Everything looked dingy and gross, and it just felt like, okay, this isn't a set, this feels like we're there.
Yeah. I mean, Albert, I don't even know what you're talking about. Clean. There's not one clean part. There's nothing.
Right.
Everything. I feel like
Exactly.
I am a little bit of a germaphobe, and the very idea of like touching anything in that house, like even touching the handle, like I immediately gotta get fucking hand sanitizer or you know,
Oh.
I don't know, just bleach my hands. I don't give a fuck. uh,
All right. Well, okay, the sheriff. Too much or the perfect fit for this film? Because he kind of comes off like a lot, right? Right out the gate. He doesn't even seem like he's there to help too much. What are
um,
your opinions of him?
uh, Arlie Ermy is fucking legend. I think he steals every scene that he's in this movie, which is why when we get to the prequel, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, which I think comes out in 2006, like they make him essentially the lead character. Um, I think he's great. I remember being so perplexed um, by everything that he does when he arrives. The handful of times I watched it, like the first handful of times I watched it, I was like, even after I realized he's a bag, I'm like, why? Why is he having them wrap up this body in saran wrap? And granted, the first time I saw this, I'm like a 13-year-old kid, so I'm pretty sure that's not how things are done, but I'm not like 100% sure. I'm like, did do you really have to wrap up your own dead bodies if you come across them? It's a
Yeah.
lot of work. No, I think he's spectacular, man. I think he's an excellent villain in this. And I just think he just gets to chew the scene so much. I'm sure they just like were like, all right, go on, Lee, and they just rolled the camera and he did his thing. I
Do
think,
what you want. Yeah.
yeah,
No, his the way he taunts each character is just like I loved it. It was just like it made me like, oh fuck, like especially when there's the chunks of
yeah,
stuff in the van and he's making him like move it and it's just like you just are like, oh fuck, dude. Well, really? So yeah. All right, with that being said, on the gore scale, Johnny,
yeah.
what are we scoring this gore wise?
Slaughterhouse.
Really? Slaughterhouse? This one? Okay. Um, all right then. I'm just gonna go ahead and agree with you, Slaughterhouse. Um, gosh, it was pretty gnarly. And I want to say a lot of it has to do with that intro scene, right? Where it just, like you said, pulls through the head. It's just oh.
If we're talking gore right now, then like I mean I like I know we have like best kill scenes and stuff like that coming up, but in terms of just like
Well,
sheer,
just really quick.
yeah,
Remember, I the thing that has the slaughterhouse title right now is the sadness. So if we're comparing it to that, where do we land?
it's immediately what I thought about when I said that. I was like, fuck, the sadness. I can't remember it. Like I know we've talked about it before, but I was like, that's immediately when I think of like the goriest movie I've ever seen. It's like
The most fucked up. Yeah.
the sadness, martyrs, um, maybe inside. But like I don't think like particularly in terms of like actual gore, like actual like very believable gore. Like some of these other movies, like it's very bloody, but this is just fucking horrendous. Like the scene where Andy gets his leg chopped off. Still to this day, I've watched this movie, I mean, dozens of times, and that scene still makes me squirm. When to piggyback on that, when Leatherface puts the salt on Andy, and then like you actually see the hook go in his back. I mean, there's just stuff in here like those movies are gross. They're bloody and they're shit shows. Yeah, but like seriously, very few movies like make me squirm in my seat the way this flick does, let alone the fact that I've seen it as many times as I have and the effect is still the same, you know? So I very much do, you know, they can all exist in the same slaughterhouse together, can't they? All these movies?
Yeah. Okay. So what is your favorite scene in this film if you had to pick like one scene that really like stuck with you and you thought about it after the fact?
Um in terms of just the like what I think is the best scene. I think this movie's littered with them. I think there's you could throw a dart and hit any scene and it has its merits. But um, my favorite bit of this film is the very end, um, because that is what after being horrified for 2 hours. That's the bit that stuck with me, which is this is the only footage of known footage of Thomas Hewitt, the man they call Leatherface, and it's just the and it freeze frames
Okay.
on him. Um, I think that's great. I think it's such a great ending to this movie, with all the found footage stuff. Yeah, man, I love that ending so much.
Okay. If I'm gonna give mine, I want to say it's when Leatherface is wearing Aaron's boyfriend's face, and he looks straight at her when
Yeah,
she's sitting in the van.
yeah,
Um, and that was just it was Kemper's face, right? And it's
yeah,
just like kind of hanging off of his head, and it's just like, oh my god, dude! And they just kind of do like a slow mo because she's like, oh shit, she realizes that it's her man's face. And that one kind of got me. It was just like, holy shit, this is gnarly.
yeah. It is a disturbing sequence, and I think Pepper has just been sawed up, so she's wearing like a puffy jacket. So there's all this like all these like feathers flying around. It has this weird macabre beauty to it. I don't know, just that shot is very disturbing, yet just framed in a very, you know, pretty way. I mean, I could say that about a lot of the shots in this movie. Like dirty and grimy, yes, but very very well photographed. Um,
It definitely hits you where I feel like they wanted it to land.
mhm.
What do you think about the practical effects in this film? Do you love them? Hate them? Did they sell it for you?
Yes, I love them. Yes, they very much sold it for me. 10 out of 10.
Okay, okay. Um, what is the best kill scene in your opinion?
Um,
And it's weird because they do pull away from several scenes, but in your opinion,
I know it's not necessarily like a kill, but this person is dying. I think Andy just gets it the worst, you know. I mean, Kemper gets it pretty bad because he gets a chainsaw to the nads, which is pretty horrific. Um, uh, but I
did
mean, the
you
same.
did you have any extra feelings that like occurred to you when the wedding ring falls out of Kemper's pocket since you mentioned him getting offed?
Um, I think it's a great little. I think it's a great little like little extra bit of information that uh, really does kind of make you go, ah, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, um, you already felt bad, you know. Maybe they do that scene in the beginning, which is good character development about him saying, yeah, we're gonna get you a ring and everything, and you know that he's just waiting for them to get to the concert. You know, they were only a couple hours away, and he was gonna propose. And they had gotten those drugs when they were in Mexico, and he was going to try and either sell them or plant them. I don't know what he was going to do with it, but he this whole trip, like from Kemper's perspective, is the start of his like future life with Aaron. He's gonna sell all that marijuana, get some money. He's gonna propose to her. They're gonna hopefully start a new life, like have some money in their pocket and everything. So in terms of that character, it's insanely tragic because really we get more about Kemper and what his motivations are, and what he wants out of life than anybody else in the movie. If you think about it, we don't get too much backstory from any of the other characters. Um, I think we get more backstory uh, from these characters than we do any of the characters in the original. That is like one of my if I had to have a gripe with the original is that I don't care about any of those characters in the original.
They're almost annoying.
They're terribly annoying. Franklin is the most
Franklin.
annoying character ever put to screen. Um,
Yeah.
and honestly, Sally isn't much better for most of the film. She's just kind of being a not a particularly nice gal to her brother. I mean, granted, I wouldn't be nice to him either, but like you don't get a whole lot of pathos with any of these characters, especially the rest of the gang, um, who all get dispatched within like 5 to 10 minutes of each other in the original film. So I would say that that is one of the remakes strong suits, is that we get significantly more time and engagement with these characters. So when they do bite the bullet, there is more emotion behind it, particularly Kemper. Yeah. So sorry, that was a very long-winded way to answer your
No,
question.
you're good. You're good.
Uh, but yeah, I do think just everything that Andy goes through is the worst. I know his death is actually by Aaron's hands, but he's pleading to be killed because he's been hanging from a hook in his spine for however many hours. Like he's bleeding out. Like I love that he's hanging over a piano and his toes are just like touching the keys, and it's just like like where the fuck is all the water coming
Water
from?
coming from?
Pipes in the
Yeah.
house, like in the basement. I mean, it is so fucking disgusting in there, man. It just grosses me out so much. Oh boy. What about you? What's your favorite kill?
Oh man. I honestly don't know. I want to say it's the one that they didn't show. So to avoid an NC-17 rating in the USA, the more graphic shots of Morgan's death were cut. The
Yeah.
original version of the scene featured the shot of the chainsaw slicing into his crotch and then having intestines and blood falling out of him. Cut version cuts away when the chainsaw is about to cut him totally and cuts out the intestines falling from his body.
Yeah.
The hitchhiker death scene was also cut severely, and the original scene has her ear flying off of her head and blood and brain matter being more dark in color and more in in amount of flying out of her head. Jedediah was originally supposed to be killed by Leatherface for helping Aaron and Morgan escape, but the scene was scrapped for being too intense. So after watching the film, I watched like the making of and
Yeah.
watching the scene of Morgan being killed. I there was I kind of wish that they would have left that in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they would have if they could have. I'm surprised. I mean, I have the Blu-ray with all the goodies on it. I feel like it's. Do you know if that those scenes are on any home media at all? Any of those deleted scenes?
Oh, I they show them on the extra footage.
Oh,
They're
okay.
just not in the film.
Yeah,
But
I feel like this was the time of like doing unrated versions and stuff like that. I'm surprised they didn't throw that back in there.
right, I'm kind of shocked myself. All right, so I love me some Leatherface chase scenes where it's like through the woods. He's got the chainsaw he's trying to start, or the gas, the smoke is like trailing while he's running after his victim. Through like the sheets and the clothesline and stuff. Did you feel like this was more realistic, or was it a little too campy for you?
I mean, I don't think it's campy at all. I think particularly the sheet sequence is fucking terrifying and ends in a very um, what it like just a legitimately looks like what it would look like if a leg got clipped by a fucking chainsaw.
Mm.
So um, that's very disturbing. I think in terms of uh, like believability, homeboy that they got to play Leatherface here, Andrew Bernarski.
I'm
He's
glad
such
that you pronounced his name because there's no way I felt like every time I looked at his last name, I'm like, I'm not even gonna attempt it. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm
I
not gonna
don't
do it.
I don't know if that's how it said, but I'm just kind of going from what it looks like. But he's a pretty big guy, so like seeing him like run around the woods carrying the chainsaw is pretty believable. Uh, Gunnar Hansen is I feel like he's a slightly smaller dude, so like I feel like he would get a little bit more tuckered out doing these lengthier chase scenes that we see in the remake. If anything, the running through the woods does get just a smidge bit tedious towards the final act, like because we get a bit of that with Erin before she gets taken to the house, and then we get more of it after. Um, I said I don't know if I've said it on your podcast. I feel like I probably have, but I've definitely said it on my podcast and in my reviews. Like I my least favorite part of slashers, and I fucking love slasher movies, but my least favorite part of the whole beats that we have to go through is like the final chase scene with the final girl. Like it just they always seem to go on forever to me, and I'm like, let's get to the fucking point. Um, so this one really is kind of the exception with um, because I think that whole sequence in the slaughterhouse is just masterful. I think it is so suspenseful and so scary. Um, and I'm never not on the edge of my seat. The only thing, like I said, is that the running through the woods bits do tend to feel a little redundant because we just saw the same bit, not but 10-15 minutes before. So but you got to get from point A to point B. So that is a very minor gripe if I had to labor on something like that.
So, with that being said, does Jessica Biel make for a good final girl in your opinion?
Um, I think she has uh, a great sort of like survival, like need for survival. Vibe about her. Not and she's her acting in this is so good. Like it is so good. Like her just being scared like is insanely believable. I like that she is smart but not too smart. She's not uh leagues and bounds ahead of anybody else, but she is trying to figure things out. Like I said, we don't get like a ton of backstory with her or anything like that. But I do find her much more likable and enjoyable to spend time with than Sally.
Yeah.
Um, so I do think she is a fine final girl. Like I like that she goes back for the kid. I like that she fucking nails the sheriff with a car and then goes back to run him over again and again. I think that's
Yeah,
um
I like that scene too.
I don't know if she's in my top 5 or even top 10 final girls, but I think Jessica Biel herself, like the actress, delivers a one of her best performances, if not her best performance in this movie. I think she's spectacular. Just everything that she had to do and go through, and the raw energy that she leads on screen, I think is really worth the price of admission. So
So they kind of leave Leatherface's fate up for interpretation. I
Yeah.
mean, he gets his arm cut off, right?
Hmm.
Now, how do you crank a chainsaw or without your other arm? Do you think that he can go on and continue to be this serial killer guy, or what are your opinions on him continuing after this film? Obviously, there's this franchise kind of takes a lot of different like twists and turns, and we have different, but just based off of this film alone, how do you feel like Leatherface comes out of this?
I don't think he's using a fucking chainsaw anymore. I can tell you that much. Uh, Maybe he takes the Jason route and uses a machete. Um, Maybe he uses a fucking axe. But I think with the sheriff being dead, um, Uncle Monty being an invalid, uh, the grandma doesn't have a whole lot that she can really do. Like, Jedediah, the kid, is seems to be of good nature because he helps them escape. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to be too much more in the way of kidnapping people and stuff like that. I think the Hewitt family is probably going to end up living off the land and you know doing whatever. But obviously, they do kill those cops at the end. So who knows?
What do you score this film 1 out of 10?
All right. Well,
And if you haven't touched on your initial thoughts growing up with this film and it being kind of the most horrorish film you see as a child growing up, and your initial thoughts on it, what do you give this film?
all right. Well, I will probably be monologuing here for a minute if that's okay with you,
Go
because
for it.
yeah, I do have a lot to say. So, yeah, the very first time I saw this film, I was about 13 years old, um, maybe 14. Um, it was a Thanksgiving break, so I do believe I was probably about 14 years old. It had come out the year prior, and I had gone to the video store with my dad and one of my good friends at the time. We were going to be leaving town on a camping trip, and we had back in the day we had these little portable DVD players that you could plug into the car to keep them charged.
I
So
remember those.
yeah, we rented a couple movies. And my friend had told me that he had seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and he thought it was scary. Um, Turns out that the one that we rented was this one and not the one that he saw, which was the original. But I remember, like I said, seeing ads for this in the newspaper and stuff like that when I was a little kid, and just getting a general vibe of that this movie was something of a big deal, even though I wasn't really sure why. So this is a movie that we grabbed this film, and we grabbed Sleepy Hollow and one other film, um, and what we ended up doing was while we were camping, we hooked up the DVD player to the truck, and we got some pillows and we laid in the bed of the truck out in the woods and watched this movie with the nighttime sky above us out in the wilderness on a little portable DVD player. And it scared the living hell out of me. Like I said, I had grown up really, really kind of sheltered. So this was the most graphic and disturbing thing I had ever seen. And so when we were laying in the tent that night, my brother had joined us and he had stayed awake and watched the whole film with me. My friend had fallen asleep. So I was in the tent shivering because A, it was cold, but B, more importantly, because I was scared out of my mind. I was shivering and shaking. Um, and I was convinced the thing that was keeping me awake was that I was going to hear a chainsaw in the distance. Um, but I became pretty obsessed with this movie for a couple of years. It never stopped scaring the hell out of me in my youth, and I wanted to own it so I could watch it, but I was afraid to own it because, like I said, I was raised religious, so like the idea of having it in my home was still kind of like, oh, I have this evil thing in my house, which was really just kind of my fucked up brain. Um, but I ended up getting a copy of it and would watch it semi frequently. I lived out in the Mojave Desert with my dad for a couple of years, and we had no neighbors around except for one that was like a quarter of a mile away from us. Everything else was just desert. So watching that movie out in that environment was scary too. It just had a lasting effect on me, and I remember trying to figure out in the early days of the internet, trying to like find websites that talked about the true story behind Texas Chainsaw Massacre and finding out what was real and what wasn't, and then being severely disappointed when none of the stuff that happens in the movie is actually real. Um, Not disappointed, but like feeling like they had lied to me, basically. That was really my first brush with like based on a true story being utter bullshit. Um, so this movie has been with me for a long, long time. I ended up seeing the original handful of years later, and at the time did not have like I was severely disturbed by the original, but I was not quite as impressed with the effect, the lasting effect that the remake had on me. Obviously, as I've grown and matured and my taste has matured, I uh, love the original. I actually find it to be, oddly enough, kind of a comfort movie for me. So there's a lot to unpack there, but all that said, uh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is very, very instrumental in uh, me as a horror fan for sure. As I've babbled on about over the last hour, I'm very passionate about it. I think it is a very, very well constructed horror film. I think in a lot of ways it uh, improves upon the original, particularly in terms of characters and just sheer um, scariness, while the original is very intense, and the original just kind of feels like a fever dream. It feels like there it just kind of feels like being high, I guess. The remake just feels like it could happen in some way, shape, or form. Um,
Did you
Also, this
did you miss the grandpa hammer scene in the remake then? And that's my only thing that I feel like the remake kind of like should have attempted, even though it didn't. It was
no
like
see
because that scene was so for me, right? The fact that he's like missing her head, and it's
see
like
I think the fact that they did not do the dinner sequence in the remake is probably one of the smartest choices they made because I don't think you can top that scene. That is the fucking scene from the original, outside of Leatherface spinning around at the end. Um, and Sally having lost her goddamn mind.
Yeah.
I think the dinner scene is the fucking show stopping scene from the OG. Um, but yeah, all that said, in like having watched the all the bonus content and stuff like that on the DVD back in the day, one of my favorite things about this movie, oddly enough, is the trailer. I think it has one of the best trailers I have ever seen for a movie, action, horror, romance, or otherwise. I think it has one of the all-out best trailers I've ever seen. I highly recommend you just go watch it. It's about 2 minutes, and if it does not get you hyped to watch a fucking chainsaw movie, I don't know what will. I am constantly chasing that high from that trailer. So
So are you talking about the black? It's just like all black, and you just hear sounds,
it
or
it
is this a
has
different
there. I
one?
think there was that original teaser trailer, which I think is pretty spectacular as well. But there is a theatrical trailer that has oh god, what's his name? I know the song. It's "Signal to Noise" that plays at during the climactic beats of the trailer. I think it's uh yeah, man, that trailer is fucking sick. Uh, but all that yeah, man, the gore. Jessica Biel is so fucking hot in this movie. Not to be too much of a bro right now, but she's just knockout. Very easy on the eyes when everything else in this movie is really hard on the eyes. Some of the most painful sequences I've ever seen in a movie. And just really standout acting across the board. I believe every single one of these characters is going through this shit. So I could babble on uh, for much longer about it. I really do love this movie and is, like I said, an integral part of not only me as a horror fan, but me as a person. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 9.5 out of 10. I think it is pretty spectacular.
Okay. All right. With that being said, do you feel like this film paid homage to the original Toby Hooper's Chainsaw Massacre? Sorry, the beer's hitting me for sure right now.
Oh, no, you're good, buddy. Uh, just try saying it 5 times fast. Uh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to be like those the filmmakers that are always like we really just wanted to honor the original X, Y, and Z, blah blah blah. But this really is kind of the first movie, for bad or good. This sets off a fucking trend of crazy amounts of horror remakes. Most of them not good. Most of them do not, you know, come near, the intensity and the ambition of this flick. So um, I think they were very uh, concerned about getting it right. If that answers your question, I do think that they were just taking what Toby Hooper did with a near impossible budget in the insane elements of uh, the Texas environment, and they just said, let's turn the dial up 1,000 and see what we get. So yeah, I do think they pay homage without certainly without tarnishing anything. That's the great thing about remakes, man. You can always, if you don't like it, just go watch the original. This film has not hurt the original at all. The original is still great all by itself,
Agreed. All right. So, if you had to double feature this film, what would you double feature with this?
Hmm. I'm gonna let you go first on this one because this is one that I haven't really been able to decide. So I need the extra, 60 seconds to think about it.
So for me, I really liked the gore in this film. I really liked the aggressiveness in this film. I really liked the pace in this film. And one film that makes me kind of feel that same kind of pace, youthfulness, we're dealing with the same like age group of people, I feel, is the Evil Dead remake.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so for me, right? I mean, that one, I even feel like that movie steps it up a notch. Right out the gate, it just from start to finish, it's just like, fuck you. And it just
Yeah.
constantly hitting you with something, right? So
Absolutely.
for me, it's just like fuck. So yeah, I would probably watch this and then the Evil Dead remake to like bring someone that's not into horror and be like, okay, after these two
Or
films,
scare them shitless.
right? If you don't like horror movies after these two films, you're not to meant to like horror
I
movies.
guess
Go
not. No.
go watch Dances with Wolves. I don't know.
Oh no! Oh man! Oh, okay. Jesus Christ! Uh, I'm just imagining someone's like, no, no, I don't really watch horror movies. All right, you're gonna sit down and watch these two, and if you don't like them, I can't help you. Oh, see, I like yours because yours like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is pretty downbeat by the end of the movie. At least the thing with the Evil Dead movies is no matter how fucking savage and gory they get, there's always an element of like tongue in cheek about it. You're always having fun in an Evil Dead movie, I think, no matter how fucking gruesome it gets. Um, my pick, I think, is just as fucking dour as Texas Chainsaw, if not more. But it is in the same vein and is also a remake, and is also one of the good remakes. The Hills Have Eyes, I
Ooh,
think, has that level of just fucking grime and non-stop savagery about it that I think really pairs well with Texas. So yeah, that would be my pick.
all right. All right. I like that one. Um, okay. Well, wrapping things up, what film have you seen from 2024 that really impressed you? Hopefully, there's one. I know that there's been kind of a lot of horror that's come out, some that's
Too
been
much, dude.
unexpected, right? It's there. Some of it's coming out of left field that I'm really excited about. I think that Hollywood is seeing that it's like definitely a thing to pay attention to. I think Marvel's out, right? Because it was Marvel forever, like all
Well,
superhero bullshit. And
the
now,
the thing is with horror is that it's always been around. It's always been a cash cow because you can make them for a little bit amount of money and this, that, or the other, and get good returns a lot of the time because everyone loves to go see a horror movie. I think the issue that we're facing now is that the market is getting oversaturated. So while there are a lot of good movies coming out, I don't know if they're performing as well because there's too much. Um, and that could end up hurting them in the long run. Um, because while Marvel was like churning out movies left and right, there was still X amount of months in between a Marvel movie. We're getting a horror movie every fucking week, whether it be in the theaters or on streaming. There was the week of like back in March where we had Immaculate, Late Night with the Devil, and Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire all released on the same weekend, which they're all different types of movies, But like, guess what? I have a kid. A lot of people have children and other things, jobs. So I can't go see all three of them. I could only go see one. Um, so I think it's great that we have all this content to choose from. I think it's unfortunate though that we're just churning these out because I think a lot of films are gonna get you know lost or underappreciated because there's just so much content that you can't keep up with it right now. And maybe studios will see, oh, we put X amount of dollars into this movie, but it only gave us X amount of dollars back. So now we don't want to go for that horror movie. And the reason that it only made that much money is because it came out a weekend after another horror movie, Um, so when there's that much, you know, uh, when you're all fighting for the same piece of meat, eventually, that meat is going to be gone, and you only get little snippets a piece. So I'm I'm really excited about all the horror content. It's hard. It's definitely hard to keep up.
Yeah,
But
completely agree with you there. I'm just like, holy shit, man. I'm
um,
trying to like only do videos on stuff that excites me, right? At this
yeah,
point, because if I try to do every single possible thing like that's on streaming services and everything else, it's gonna be
no, that's a full time job right there, and I'm pretty sure you're like me and you don't get paid to do this. So.
exactly, exactly.
um, I really liked Late Night with the Devil. I thought that was great. That's streaming on Shutter right now. So if anybody who tunes into this hasn't watched it, definitely worth your fucking time. If you have a Shutter account, you can watch that shit for free. It's great. Um, the other big one that I was really impressed by, uh, and had it had no business being as good as it was the First Omen. I thought that was a pretty spectacular prequel to a film franchise that is damn near 50 years old. And
I enjoyed that one as well.
yeah, I thought it was great.
I wish they would have showed the creepy creature thing that she fucked a little bit more, but
You always want to see more. You're not one to let things be left in the shadow.
exactly. I need to know. I'm like, I want to know what this thing is now.
Um, and the one that I watched last night that I knew I was gonna like when I finally spied the trailer when we went and saw the first Omen, and was just had so much fun with it. Just had such a good time and went in knowing fairly little, probably a little bit more than I wanted to know after some reviews and stuff like that got dropped. But I waited until it was available to rent on streaming. Was Abigail. I really liked Abigail. I thought that movie was just so much fun, and all the characters were incredibly likable. Very well um, done picture by the guys. Um Radio Silence, obviously known for their Scream movies, but I like Ready or Not better than either one of their Scream movies, and I thought Abigail was much more in tune with Ready or Not. So I had a lot of fun watching that one.
I was really impressed by that as well. I
Michael,
because I was going in thinking, oh fuck, here we go. And then I actually really enjoyed it. I actually saw it twice in theater.
boy, yeah.
Right?
I fucking love Dan Stevens. Ever since The Guest, I've just like been like, where, like, what's going on? Why is he not working more? And then he was in the new Godzilla movie, which I haven't seen, and he was in this movie, and he's in some other weird like horror movie that it looks more like a psychological thing that I forget the name of it, but that's also coming out this year if it hasn't already come out. But it's cool to see that he's bam 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 just dropping in these movies left and right. And I thought he was just the best part of that movie last night. So yeah, man, Abigail's definitely where it's at. It's you can rent it on Prime Video and shit. If you just want to sit from the comfort of your home like I did and take pee breaks whenever you want, like I.
All right, cool. Well, that wraps it up pretty much. Thank you for joining me, Jony. I appreciate you accepting my invitation once again.
Always.
And I will link your information down below, your YouTube and your link tree, if I get it right down there, so that people can find you.
Thanks,
Thank you for watching this episode of Blood and Brews. I've had a lot of fun with this episode, and I really enjoyed this film, just like Jony did. And yeah, I'm glad that we got to talk about it with you guys. So thank you again, and have a very good night.